And welcome once again to the Liberty Lounge podcast. I'm Johnny B, and this is take two. We just had a meltdown, and we are starting over. I think you'll see why in just a moment. To my left is Jared of Guns and Gadgets, and out in California is Anthony, the arms scholar. We've been talking over the last several weeks about there's a continuum. There's a lot of really, really good people in our industry that do a lot of amazing things that do supportive work or build gear or do training or do hopefully a little bit of influencing like the three of us that I hope do good things and help push the Second Amendment forward, preserve what we do have, train people to protect their families, et cetera. A lot of good. I also believe there are some shadow players and there are influencers. We talked about this. Influencers that will do anything for $1 and that will sell firearms just for $1. I'm a capitalist. Anthony, you a capitalist?
Capitalist.
He's a capitalist. Jared, you in?
Moolah.
No problem. People running businesses, but there are businesses that will do anything for $1. One thing that I think we have seen over the last several years is companies using gun bunnies to sell. Where are we at in 2024, Jared, with the idea of gun bunnies?
Well, it's something that still happens. No matter what event you go to, you're going to see.
What is a gun bunny for folks that may be new to the industry?
Well, other than my friend Tony Simon, who is pound for pound the biggest gun bunny in the world.
Tony Simon is one. I don't even know how to say it. He is chocolate love, and we love him. He's a beautiful gun bunny. People that don't know him, look him up. Tony Simon. He's my gun bunny.
Heart of gold too. Tony's
Heart of
awesome.
gold.
But typically, when people say the word gun bunny, the first thing that comes to your mind is a female who is extremely attractive and all dolled up, and usually at like a booth at, say, a SHOT Show or any type of insert name convention here.
And maybe not their booth. They are hired into the booth. Companies hire these girls, ladies, women to come in and be booth candy. And it's not exclusive to the gun industry. Right. You go to a video game, woof. It gets wild.
It's everywhere because, like, let's be honest, sex sells, right? So you could be at a video game convention. I was just at a horror convention that was up here in Kingsport, and it was there too. So it's everywhere. Sex sells. And the idea is, guys will latch on to that visual and it'll draw people into the booth where you can then be, pitched about whatever it is, the firearm, the video game, the engine, or whatever it is. And I think, at least I try to go to as many of these trade shows as we can. And we'll talk more about this in future episodes. But the trade show is kind of like the life of the firearms industry. It runs on a season every year, January SHOT Show and so forth and so forth. But I've seen less of that. Not a whole lot, but you have seen a less amount of that since COVID.
Yeah, changed things. COVID changed the temperature of gun shows. I think so.
And they still do. Some of the companies will still do the same MO. They'll hire in some of the women that we all know that are great in the industry, great people, and it'll draw people to those booths.
Right, but I think what I hear you saying, and Anthony, I want to hear your opinion on this. I think what you're saying, because you just mentioned, hey, there's a bunch of women that we know, they also hire them. It's a continuum. That doesn't mean that any woman that's in the firearms industry is a bunny. That's not my point at all. I am talking about companies that will hire in eye candy for the only reasons for them to be eye candy. And They come in with maybe vapidity to the point of like, why are you here? And I also want to say this to be really clear. There are men that get upset at any attractive woman, and that thread is out there. And I think a woman should be able to fix her hair or tan or do their nails or their teeth, whatever. Do whatever. Be attractive. I care if you care. I care if you care about the Constitution. That's really what I care about. And all three of us have friends that I'm going to say that are doggone attractive, that also happen to be constitutionalists and love the country and can outshoot me and you put together. Anthony, Jared says that things may be waning, that it may be a change in the number of companies that are not using women, but that are specifically using what I would call a gun bunny.
Yeah, I think it's changing dramatically. It's interesting because, I've only been in the industry like 4 years now. And I feel like I came in right during that transition. The first SHOT Show, the gun bunny was definitely still there. And you would see that booth or you'd see them walking around. And again, it's a continuum, like we mentioned. There are women who are influencers that are definitely part of this industry and we know them. And we're not saying that they're gun bunnies, but then there are these hired out marketing girls who have no concept of firearms, who are literally just hired by these companies to walk around with firearms at booths. And again, and then there's the in between where they're kind of in the industry, but they're also kind of not. They're more Instagram model, and maybe they're just using the firearms as a vertical to get attention. So there's this continuum. But I would definitely say on the far end of companies just hiring out to marketing agencies to get pretty girls to be at their booths or to walk around SHOT Show, that's definitely or it's not hasn't gone away, but it's definitely waning after COVID. It could be just expenses. Maybe it's because a lot of companies, even with SHOT Show, we've seen what SIG and some of them have pulled out almost permanently from SHOT Show, doing their own events. We've seen a lot of companies do their own events and not doing these big industry things, especially because the booths are so expensive as it is. So it's definitely changing. I don't think it'll ever go away because, like Johnny was alluding to, every industry uses sex appeal. It's never going to go away. And is it for me to say what's right or what's wrong? No. But
I
it
don't have a
definitely,
moral problem with it, though.
yeah,
You're saying, is it right or is wrong? I don't have a moral problem
yeah.
with it at all. I think for me, one of the things I want to talk about today is that this is a unique industry. We talked about this 2 episodes ago. This is maybe the only industry where the decisions that are made here, the influence that we have on people, or our industry has on people, affects how we protect our children if things go bump in the night. And that's a different calling. That's a different priority. That's different than selling a freaking video game. I respect biology. I understand that if wow, wow, woo, wow walks by, we've all snapped to attention and we all notice. And even the married guys, they're going to look up once, and all the single guys are going to look up twice. And that's basic biology. You can't get away from that. And I don't have a moral problem with it. I have a problem, maybe an ethical problem. That's different, an ethical problem, in that I think we have an obligation to protect people's families, and that's different than selling a car.
Well, what do you guys both think of this? So we've all been at events where they will bring in, maybe it's still a gun bunny in some sense, but they'll bring in major celebrities for the same reason. So you'll have like The Undertaker, Goldberg, Adam Vinatieri. The list goes on and on. I mean,
The Iceman, Chuck Liddell, again.
Yeah. There's been a ton of people doing booth appearances, which is
it's a great point.
For the same thing, is to get asses in the seats and hopefully sell product for that company.
I mean, the same with us. It's really is the same with us. Like, people hire us for booths, again, to draw eyeballs and attention. In some regards, we would say we're just a less attractive gun bunny. we just are not physically attractive, but we have we have influence. And so
speak for yourself. I'm a handsome devil. Johnny's a single, so if anybody out there has a really nice aunt who loves the Constitution and guns and has all of her teeth and both of her eyes look in the same direction, I'm available.
Getting picky now.
yeah, I know. Johnny being picky with all those teeth.
I think this is that I was on the drive over here. I was thinking about us. Anthony, you've got fantastic hair. It is stinking remarkable. I was bald at 23, but none of the 3 of us hit the genetic lottery. And that's just the way it is. Our genetics are not that great. The 3 of us, not all that great, not that bad. We're kind of in the middle, and I'm okay with that. Yeah, kind of in the middle. But there is something to be said for attractiveness. Now, what I'm about to say, your opinion doesn't really matter. When you talk about research and stuff that data that has been sweated over, our opinion doesn't matter. I was telling somebody one time that, hey, aspirin, you can get it synthetically, but you can get aspirin from tree bark. And she goes, oh, I agree with that. And I said, it doesn't matter if you agree with it. Your feelings don't matter when it comes to actual, real, good, peer-reviewed data. Follow the science. What I'm about to say is peer-reviewed. It works. There is in one of the communication textbooks that I teach out of, it says that attractive people have the advantage in every situation. And I've had people go, oh, I don't agree with that. Doesn't matter your feelings. Attractive people have the advantage in every situation. Now, what is attractive? If it was an MMA fight, show me some cauliflower ears and some tats and some guns, he would have maybe a greater chance of signing a bigger contract. He would have an advantage. The skids are greased. And that is a true thing. I think your point about they bring in celebrities and they bring in attractants. We are drawn like moss to a flame to attractive people. And, the average guy doesn't want to say, well, I'm attracted to, I don't know, Goldberg or Hulk Hogan or Macho Man. Oh, yeah. but we have an attraction to being a part of that. I think ethically, I don't have a problem with that. And I think we just need to be aware that Goldberg and a gun bunny that's an old reference, Goldberg. Choose any good looking celebrity today. I think it's the same thing. We just need to be aware of what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, most people go to those booths knowing why they're going, right? They want to meet person XYZ, or get a selfie with them or whatever. And then, oh, by the way, let me look at your new Whiz Bang Doodad 2000. And I think that, I don't know, obviously it's effective because the industry still does it. Every industry does it. Like, you go to a car show and people go because of the bikini contests that are at car shows and motorcycle shows. So it still draws people in. But I don't know, and I'm not a manufacturer, but I don't know how much product it sells. I don't know if it translates well.
Anthony, what do you think? I've heard that before, that gun bunnies do not translate. Somebody who is in the know one time told me that they do horrifically on Instagram, that that it doesn't translate. They need, somebody with 2 million followers can translate that. But if they have 200,000, there's guys that are like actual operators that are doing stuff. And we're not just talking, I want to say this one more time. We're not talking about women in the industry that know what they're talking about. We're talking about women that companies that use, and sometimes men. There is a few men bunnies out there. Thought you were going to say something clever. And I think that it's a problem when that's all that they bring to the table. But they say that women, I have heard this, that there are the hardcore gun bunnies. It doesn't translate. Anthony, what do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to, and we all hear rumors. We hear rumors about how well things convert when certain companies partner with certain people. And to Johnny's earlier point about how attractive you are, it leads to bigger contracts or better deals. We all know that's true. We have seen people in the industry with much less, followers and influence, but because they're more attractive, all of a sudden they're sponsored by a company where you're like, how did they get that? Not saying not any specific person, but then you look at or maybe they're sponsored by Staccato, or they're sponsored by Daniel Defense. And you're like, man, they're not even really part of the industry, but they're attractive on Instagram. And you're like, oh, well, that's why. But then to Johnny's other point, we hear that they don't really do much for that company. They're not selling firearms. They don't convert well. They're not really helping that brand's recognition or influence in the industry, or helping their credibility in the two-way community or anything like that. So it is a little bit confusing, especially this is a lot of insider. It's frustrating because I know all three of us have had this problem. We have gone to gun companies and manufacturers and talked to them about doing partnerships and things like that. And they'll tell us, no, we don't see the value in partnering with a two-way news channel or someone who just talks about the Second Amendment. But then you see them throwing hundreds of thousands of dollars at gun bunnies on Instagram, who don't even really sell, who aren't really part of the industry, who don't, aren't really about the culture that we are part of here in the community. So there's frustration on that aspect. And then also, to go back to the trade show stuff, you will see companies throw hundreds of thousands of dollars at these booths, and then bring in all these gun bunnies. And then you hear them complain after the fact that they didn't sell anything during these trade shows. But then they continue to do it year after year after year, or not even year after year. They'll do 16 trade shows during that year doing the same thing and complain about, we're not converting well, or we're not selling firearms during these shows. And, as insiders, we kind of just throw up our hands and say, well, maybe you should stop just throwing money at gun bunnies who aren't part of the industry, or just, spending $2 million on your booth at SHOT Show, and maybe do try something else. So I don't know what you guys think about that, because we're hearing it so much now. I don't know. And I know Curtis recently did a video about trade shows. Maybe they're dead. I'm starting to think there is a movement by some companies to move away from trade shows, but I don't really know if they're doing anything to replace that. I haven't seen them try to move to any new age tech or working more with influencers. It almost kind of just like they're taking their ball and going home and just not really doing anything. So I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that.
I think your first point is interesting in that, none of the three of us, we're insiders, but we're not sitting in boardrooms and we're not sitting with spreadsheets in front of us. But we have heard that consistently for years, is that it's throwing good money after bad if they are going to exclusively use gun bunnies. You've heard that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We should usher in the new age of the news bunnies.
The news
news
buddy.
buddy, the news boys.
Yeah, the news boys. I think and there's another aspect that just an elephant that just sits in the room of every one of these conversations. Every time you have, and just about every trade show you go to, every talk, because some are like shooting shows and others are like talking shows, especially the talking shows. They'll bring a woman into the conversation to have the woman's perspective, and I find that offensive.
Yeah.
And I don't play identity politics. I try not to. And I was in a Zoom podcast like we're doing here a while back, and a friend of mine who I will remain nameless, I'm not putting words in her mouth, but she was there. She knows what she's doing. She's a good shooter. She's lovely too. Like she's a cool friend of mine who also happens to be nice looking. And somebody said, one of the hosts of the show was like, blah, blah, blah. And now we'll bring in so-and-so. She can give us the woman's perspective. What do you think? And she goes, can I just be a shooter? Why do I have to be the woman's perspective? Why can't I just be a really good shooter who also happens to love this country and has a family? I'm also a parent, and there's like 50 other things I am. Why do you have to pigeonhole me to being the woman and the woman's perspective? I think I changed that day. I think that hit me so hard between the eyes that now I'm starting to get secondary offense. I'd be a really good liberal. I'm getting secondary offense over it. I think there's a few things in the industry that women, because I never like it when we go to the USCCA show, they always have a whole woman's booth, like this giant booth just for women. And part of that is I'm like, and then they have all these classes just for women. Now, I think women doing gun classes without their husbands there barking orders at them is kind of cool. I think women on-body carry a little bit differently. We have a mutual friend that carries underneath her boob, and she carries 7 days a week, 365, and her holster situation is pretty cool. And so that's a little bit different. After that, Anthony, I think it gets pretty thin for me. Why do we have to delineate out this is the woman's perspective? We have a woman in our booth to counteract. Could we just get a black guy and get it over with and have all the tokens representative? Could we get a slightly Asian guy, 2 Mexicans and an Italian, and just get it over with? Can't we just be shooters? What about that, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of your points, Johnny. And we do see that. I mean, we'll see the panels where they will pick specific people, and you can tell when you're on these panels, like, hey, they picked this person for this, for the women class or the diversity class. Yeah, I think just treat everybody in the industry the same. It does frustrate me sometimes when, especially some of these courses, when they'll cater like, oh, this is a women specific course or a woman specific self-defense course. And it's like, if you wouldn't, I get it, body and biology are different. But there are also, I'm the one that's sticking out of my mind, and I kind of want to talk about it. There's this one in my local area. I'm not going to say the specific gun store or the range that does it, but they do a women's self-defense, firearms training thing. And
there's value in that, Anthony, because a lot of women don't want to go with their jackass boyfriends who's going to be telling them that. I do see value in letting women that are nervous train together. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, and that's not what I take. It's the tactics behind it, that they do these weird tactics, and then they sell this kit for these women that go to this, and it's like this weird pepper spray thing and this weird like punch thing, and then some of the defensive like hand-to-hand combat tactics they do is so weird, and you would never see a male self-defense course do that. You would see them pushing more like jiu-jitsu based stuff, wrestling based stuff, striking based stuff that has proven to work. But for whatever reason, when they do these female only classes, then all of a sudden this hokey stuff comes out, and almost sets them down a path of not real. It's not realistic. And for some reason too, with a lot of these women specific courses, they move entirely away from the most effective tool, which is the firearm itself. Suddenly, all of a sudden, the firearm is pointless, and let's do all these weird niche hand-to-hand combat things that aren't proven at all, and these weird self-defense tools that aren't proven at all, and then they just move away from the firearm. So I find a lot of issues with that, and you see it permeate with a lot of different companies, and they do those things. Yeah, our industry is weird. I think, like Johnny said, there is value in some instances to focus and cater to those groups, and I think our industry is pushing heavily into that right now, because for so long they catered to, the 3 white men right here on this podcast. And a lot of times, and that's a big demographic when it comes to firearms. Like, let's be honest, we see our analytics. That's a big demographic. That's almost all of our demographic. And so they're trying to get into different verticals. And in some ways, I think our industry is still trying to figure out how to do that in an effective way. But then you see these weird hokey things kind of also bleed in.
And it makes it even worse because like the industry can't just say, all right, I want to run 2 weeks of ads on ABC and NBC, because they can't anymore, right? It's gone so liberal and woke that you can't advertise a firearm. So they depend on the industry within itself kind of promoting each other, whether it's, ads revenue or bringing people into a booth at an event. So it's getting harder and harder. But when you have companies say, oh, well, look at this pink pepper spray, ma'am, this is so much better for you. I think it sets that group that we want to bring in closer. It sets them further away, where they're intimidated more, or they get disgusted with the chauvinistic type mentality of, that you want a good gun for you, it's got to be like this pink whiz bang that we can't sell.
Pink guns, the pink whiz bangs, pink pepper sprays, but pink guns. And to be really clear, women buy whatever gun you want. Guys buy whatever color gun. There is a turquoise, I think it's a Tiffany blue Kimber with a white grip that I think is gorgeous. It's made for women. I really like it. Carry whatever the frick you want. I just find it pandering. I have heard 1 million stories of women walking into a gun shop and they get the whole little lady treatment and they turn around and walk out. I think we have treated women very poorly in this industry in some ways. I think our industry panders to them sometimes. And I think it is, I think we need to change. I think we need to grow. Today's episode is brought to you by blackoutcoffee.com. Not the smoothest of segues, but I'm glad to tell you about what flavor am I going to mention?
Blueberry crumble.
Blueberry crumble. It is my favorite. And then also our friend Jim the other day said that he's loving Jamaica Me Crazy. How's that?
It's really, really good. If you, I just try it. Trust me. I won't even get it too far into it. Coffee liqueur. It's really, really good.
blackoutcoffee.com/liberty, 20% off your first order with code Liberty. I'm suggesting blueberry crumble, but I'm curious. I am Jamaica Me Crazy curious. Big thank you to the folks at blackoutcoffee.com/liberty. All right. We have a mutual friend. I won't say his name, but he recently hollered at me and he was very serious. He said, "Hey, Johnny, I know you're my gun guy." He said, "We own one gun, but we're getting ready to go buy, my wife and I are getting ready to go buy a pair. And can you walk me through that?" I said, "Jump in the car, come over here." So when he got to the house, I had a few items laid out and we walked through Glock 17, Glock 19, P365, Glock 43, and just walked through the sizes and the horrible snappiness that the little guns are. We walked through concealability. We walked through the whole thing. And then he goes, "All right, what about my wife?" I said, "Well, what about her?" He goes, "Everybody we've talked," oh, it burns me up. This is the part where I get fired up. "Everybody we have talked to has said, take her down and get her fitted for her little hand and go find a gun that will fit her hand." And he said that like he was looking at my stuff. "Oh, that'll fit her hand and that'll fit her hand." And I turned into Clint Smith at Thunder Ranch for 17 seconds. And I said, "There's no guarantee she fights with her own gun." And because there is no guarantee that that little lady's going to fight with that stupid pink gun. I said to my friend, I said, "Hey, you're laying in the kitchen bleeding out and your carotid artery is squirting away and you're laying there with your firearm. She's got to pick yours up, tap, rack, and go to business. Y'all need to carry the same gun." My suggestion, carry the same gun so you'll have the same mags, the same everything, and learn to be able to use any platform. I get pissed off at the entire "it'll fit your hand." That same night, we go down to a local watering hole where we all hang out. And we were sitting there and the conversation came up. And instantly one of the guys put his hand out and said, "Buddy, take her and get that fitted for her hand." Jared, you're shaking your head.
Well, I was an instructor for close to 30 years. And anytime I've had that scenario come through classes as well, and it fires me up. You can't fit a gun to your hand. I mean, there are some that have like a back strap that you can make fit your palm.
Yeah, what does that even mean? Like, where did that even come from? What does that mean? It's not a tailored suit. Like,
yeah, it's so condescending. Like, she needs to just try different types of guns, maybe bring it to a range, rent a few, which one feels most comfortable to her. And only she can decide that.
And I think the racking, how heavy it is to rack, or learning the racking technique is probably more important. I walked a little bit 2 years ago, that works here at this building. I walked her through her first handgun. She's tiny little hands, and she could not rack, and I couldn't teach her. So we jumped on a Zoom call with another female shooter who's also weighs about 104 pounds. and she walked her through the double. It was great. I think that's more important than the little hand. I think there's are things to consider for every body type and every ability level.
Yeah, there are different techniques that will work for different body styles, and it's men included. You know, if you're a wider waist individual, you have different techniques for drawing that aren't going to be the same for a narrow waisted person.
And if you're a tough guy who's in great shape, but you have arthritic fingers, your rack is going to be a little bit different. And that's freaking okay. Why do we take women and separate them in this little category and sell pink little guns to them? That pisses me off.
It's a niche market and people are taking advantage of them.
Anthony, you okay with pink guns? I'm okay with the idea. Buy whatever gun you want. But when a girl walks in or a woman walks into a gun show, or a gun store, the trouble often begins.
Yeah, I mean, I have the colors, whatever. If it makes them happy and they want to get, like my wife, she has the Tiffany blue handled guns. Like she likes that. It makes her happy. If it makes her carry, I'm all for it. I think what we're talking about is a little bit of that weird gun myth stuff that goes on in these gun stores that it's hard. I mean, I definitely sympathize with the women and maybe even the husbands or the boyfriends, whoever, who aren't super firearm savvy and they're going in the first time trying to get their wife or their significant other interested into firearms and try to buy them a firearm. And then you have someone behind the counter who talks about, well, we got to fit you to the gun, or and all these weird myths that go on.
Stopping power.
Stopping power, or, revolvers never fail, or, things like that. Or a smaller girl or smaller hands, you need a smaller gun. It's not true at all. And it's funny because even my wife thought that in her head when she was first getting into firearms. And then I tried to explain to her, well, the slide's going to be harder to rack because of the tension of the spring. So it's going to be really hard with your strength to rack that. And then also it's going to be snappier. Even with the 9mm, the smaller you go, like my Glock 43 is way snappier than my 17 just because of mass. But you don't have these guys in these gun stores saying that. They just use the easy route of, oh, here's this pink revolver. That's perfect for you. This is marketed towards a female. This is what you want. You don't want this Glock 19. The most reliable, easy to shoot, widely picked firearm. I mean, I don't even know if maybe a Glock 26 would be right for some women. I mean, I think there is some value to women feeling the different firearms and then definitely going and shooting them. Like
same for dudes, though. Dudes need to do the same thing.
Same for guys, yeah. And I think that's to Johnny's point. Like, why do we suddenly treat women different when they walk into a gun store than men, instead of just like, hey, this is kind of the standard we have across the board. Like, you got to feel these firearms, shoot them, see what you're most effective with, and which ones you can manipulate, conceal. If your goal is to conceal, make sure which ones you can conceal, figure out how you're going to carry them. Even that too, like Johnny, you talked about a little bit about how some companies or some products cater specifically to women. And I've seen some hokey stuff too about like how to conceal, some borderline unsafe things specifically for female too.
Hot garbage out there for women. I've seen bullets specifically for women, like a company that makes bullets for women, and that makes me fired up. But I do think body geometry is important. That friend of ours that carries, like she knows what she's doing on a level that I'll never attain. Like she's legit, and she under boob carries, and it works for her. Today's episode is the first one where Jared pulled a firearm out of his pants. What's going on over there in your hands, Jared?
To be clear, if any manufacturer wants me to buy their stuff, just make it FDE, because FDE all day, every day, peanut butter guns.
Yes, we got pink catered to the ladies, and FDE catered to the big
Week
boy.
7 of trying to get Staccato to sponsor us. Staccato, if you would like to sponsor.
Staccato.com. I will say this, earlier in this episode, I said that we didn't, none of the three of us won the genetic lottery. You look so sad for a second. Like, did you take you a second to process that?
You were calling me ugly.
I don't. No. Just when you look at Tom Brady and then you look in the mirror, you're like, wah, wah.
Yeah, he's a pretty boy.
We're funny though.
Yeah, we have that.
We do have that going for us, which is nice.
During the panel, Johnny, did you catch during the GunCon panel that John Patton got called a thumb? So at least we haven't been called a thumb. Or no, elbow. It was an elbow. Yeah, he got called an elbow.
Called him an elbow.
So this all happened with my wife typed in a question because they had a Q&A session for attendees and people watching online. And she's asked the same question every year, is like, how much would it take to get for John Patton to shave his beard? And Sean Heron said if he shaved, he would look like an elbow. And it was it was hilarious.
For context for the viewers, John, like the three of us, John did not win the genetic lottery either, and he has a pretty good beard. He has a good beard. He would look like an elbow. That is horrific. John Patton, if you're listening, I am very, very sorry. I want to say really, really clearly, because I think conversation like this can get misconstrued, can get taken out of context. Speaking of, like 2 weeks ago, we were talking about taking money for products. And as a freaking joke, I'm the meme guy. Shocking that I would say something jokingly. I said, I'll do anything. I'll sell my soul for $1. Did y'all see that? There's some guy, Mr. Gunzinger sent it to me. Some guy took that one clip and like, oh my gosh, dong, 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 it's the devil. Like really thought I was serious.
I did not see that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What would I do for $1? A lot of things. Sign me up. Staccato.com.
Staccato.
But I think conversations like this can get misconstrued really, really easy. I love women. I love me some women. And I think women need to be a part of the conversation. My favorite firearms instructor is probably Heidi Smith, Clint Smith's wife. When she is on the range, I got chills. When she's on the range, my day is better. You've been out there with her. And when she's there, and maybe just because she and I have a personal connection, I feel better. I have shot better when she's my spotter behind me. And I think she's probably the best. I'd say she is the best spotter I've ever been around. But she's awesome, freaking regardless of her chromosomes. Is it chromosomes? I think it's chromosomes. Regardless of our gender, it doesn't matter. She's freaking good. But women need to be a part of this conversation. I love me some women. Jared, you okay with women in the industry as a whole, or should they get back in the kitchen?
No, obviously they're part of the populace. They're part of the talk of everything we do, and we need them in the gun space. We need them to start being more vocal about their love for being able to protect their own family, their children, and being part of the Second Amendment community. And unfortunately, when it comes to grabbing an ear of an elected official, they're going to listen to women more than they will listen to a guy because men are more bravado, where women are more emotional. So ladies, we love you. We need you. You're a big, huge part of this community. You're a big, huge part of
more.
You're a big fix for the problem we have.
Yeah,
I am totally okay with that. And I just want to say that really clear. I don't want things to get misconstrued at all. All right, I'm going to put you all on the spot, and you can't have the same answer. Who's one of your favorite women in the industry? Anthony, you go first. One of your favorite women in the industry besides me.
Johnny. No, I think one of the ones I love watching, Lena. I think everybody likes Lena. She kind of walks that line of being an amazing shooter first. She's just an amazing shooter first. And then all the other stuff comes and she's an amazing shooter, whether she's a female or she just can outshoot anybody. Obviously, because also her dad is the great Jerry Michalik. So she's got some skills, and maybe a little bit of that DNA went to her, but Lena is the easy one for me.
Will stole the one I was going to use because I love Lena. But I'm going to use one that a lot of people probably won't pull off the top rack of their brain. And that's Diana Mueller. She's not only is a phenomenal shooter and she's a professional shooter, but she started Women for Gun Rights, which used to be called Women DC Project. And they do a ton of work legislatively and lobbying in Congress. And what she has going is a huge, huge advantage to our just the furtherance of the Second Amendment.
And she's a phenomenal shooter. She's a phenomenal shooter.
Women, I mean, that's kind of universal in just about everything. Women, because of their hand-eye coordination and because of their ability and just some of the things that they naturally can do, not all women, but as a whole, they can make some pretty doggone good shooters and can outshoot a lot of dudes because of the hand-eye coordination.
Plus, they listen to instruction.
That was the other thing.
Yeah.
If you talk to any instructor, and I think this is universal, every instructor says the same thing. They all say the same thing. Give me a woman that's never shot over some dude that was in the Boy Scouts for 6 years and went to the military for 4 months and knows everything to do. They just listen and they'll just do it. I'm going to stick for my answer with Heidi Smith. And she and her husband together are American heroes. And she's my favorite instructor that I've ever got to sit with. And that's putting a lot of people to the side. And I think that's pretty cool. I think it really is. And she's cool regardless of gender. The bottom line is sex sales. Attractive people have an advantage. If I was running a multi-million-dollar company and trying to get a message out, I'm going to choose nice looking people over thumbs and elbows. And you cannot discount how nice looking Garand Thumb is. And people are going to take that out of context. Ha ha ha. Nobody's that straight. And Garand Thumb, and
Have you
he
seen his
is,
steroid pictures? You've seen
that's
him?
my next comment. He is currently bulking up. He's got a full sleeve. He is becoming the thing the little video game boys who are sitting at home going, I'm going to be an operator one day, like Garand Thumb. He is turning into that. John Lovell has fantastic hair and is doing fantastic. Research says it gives you an advantage. I mentioned earlier that it would give you a contract. It gives you an advantage socially. It gives you an advantage interpersonally and with your relationships a little bit. And good-looking people have an advantage in the boardroom, on the range, or on the sports field. Quarterbacks tend to be good-looking. Are they good-looking because they're quarterbacks? Or are they quarterbacks because they're good-looking? It's a complicated tabula rasa kind of thing. But I tell you, that same when he was 13 and you go to a quarterback camp, the coaches are going to pay attention to the kids that look like quarterbacks. That's law. James Reeves of TFB TV is also kind of my favorite gun bunny. He is a handsome devil, and that helps in the industry. Anthony, you're a capitalist. I don't have a problem with it morally. I really don't. I just think it's the hard law of biology and capitalism that good looks sell.
Yeah, there is absolutely no doubt. And it's funny we're talking about this because I've mentioned jokingly a few times to my wife about, man, I bet you if I had if I had six pack abs, I probably would get better sponsorship deals. I
You
probably would
would.
have more opportunities. You would probably see me on SHOT Show booths. Like it's funny too, because if anybody ever goes to SHOT Show, walk around SHOT Show and look at the pictures of all these booths of all the influencers and creators and guys and girls they use. You're not seeing thumbs and elbows like us. You're seeing the good looking people. And it's usually the same 4 or 5 of them too, that you'll see in all the different booths. So definitely there's an advantage of looking better. I need to look better. One of the parts of like me trying to get healthier and working out more, obviously, is I need to be healthier, but like it does have a monetary value as well. If you look better, people want to watch your videos more because you're more pleasing to look at, obviously. And this is guys like it. I mean, it's funny how many times too you'll see guys who become fitness influencers and they talk about, well, I thought when I got abs and I got super muscular, it would be all these females in my DMs, and it's all men. Like your demographic tends to be a lot of men, and that's a lot of our analytics as well, as a lot of men. And guys just resonate with those, like, not alpha male is a horrible word, but just more attractive guys. They look up to those guys who have that social contract of like, hey, they look good, they're fit, they're pleasing to look at and watch, and that's why a lot of people like Grantham. To push
But
back a
he's
little
getting
bit,
the full package. It's not just, hey, he's
yeah,
handsome, so people throw money. He's also freaking knows what he's doing, and he
yeah,
happens to be hilarious, and
yeah,
he can create and craft the narrative, and he grinds and he works. It's not just a free pass. There are good-looking bums, maybe formerly good-looking bums that have fantastic genetics, but it is an ease into all situations. A lot of guys are uncomfortable with the word attractiveness. When I teach a section on attractiveness in the classroom. And when I talk about that, a lot of men get really uncomfortable when I say, hey, why are you attracted to your favorite sports stars? And they're like, oh, I'm straight. I didn't know. And they can't, it's not a word. Like, I have to switch the word to magnetism, or you move
yeah,
towards something rather than away. Michael Jordan in 1996, throwing down that dunk, we all move towards him. Doesn't mean we want to sleep with him.
yeah.
So that attractiveness is a word that a lot of folks are not real comfortable using. Anthony said something a second ago that you can monetize attractiveness. The three of us we talked about this about 15 episodes ago, going through something in our own lives where we're doing better and we're trying to do better. And I know that all three of us have been made major decisions in our lives, and we're on a lot more of this, a lot more water, and a lot less of other stuff. And we're trying. Anthony says that you can capitalize on attractiveness. Jared, in our industry, how big of a part is attractiveness, and who's making the money?
Oh, it's a big factor.
We're not bitter.
No, not at all. It's a huge factor, and good on them. Like, good on them for utilizing a tool in their toolbox to help get ahead. Like, I'm a capitalist, make all the money you can. And if if your attractiveness or your sexiness or how you dress or act or how good you shoot or repel through windows, if that helps you get higher, on the ladder, then so be it. I think it's a big part of the industry. I really do. There's probably a small percentage of people that are paid to do what they do in our industry based off of skill set alone without any other factor.
Say that again. You say there's very few people that are paid just on skill set.
Yeah. So like if you have a thumb or an elbow who is the best breacher in the industry, they're probably not going to have the same shine to them. Whereas if you have like a model quality person who can do it the same way, they'll tend to have more limelight exposure if they're a better looking foe than if they were, if it was Shrek, running a bill drill. Nobody's going to want to watch that.
And what's attractive is different in different situations. It doesn't have to be a shiny or a perfect tooth or the perfect hair kind of guy. It could be a scary looking grizzled dude who just got back from Afghanistan. That is still attractive in that silo. I think it's important to distinguish that it's okay to be good looking, to be ridiculously good looking. We are not jealous. That's not it at all. Oh, Grand Thumb's, and I don't think any of us are suggesting this. He's just making money because he's handsome. I'm telling you, there's a lot more to it. He just has an advantage because he got some pretty freaking good genetics, and what he's done with his genetics. Brandon Herrera has the best hair in the industry, and that's a thing. And I think that has helped him along the way, but he's also super intelligent and happens to be hilarious. I think it's real nice for the three of us to sit here and go, it's gun bunnies, we need to move away from that. But the harsh truth is we'll even sometimes be flipping through Instagram and reach over and show our phones to each other and go, wow, wow, we wow. That there are good-looking women, it gets our attention. It does. And like it or hate it, it's part of it. I think it's a good question for the day. Is it just the way it is? Good-looking things sell. Good-looking people get our attention because we do flip our phones around to each other. There's one company, and I don't even remember their name, but they do some really, really in your face where they'll have the girls lay down and their butts are out there, and they'll have them shoot a high power gun and they'll show their butts jiggle in slow motion, but they do it like so egregiously or so in your face, and they're making fun of themselves. I think I kind of like that better than just trying to fool us with a good looking woman who has no idea who's holding the gun wrong. I'll take overt sexism or sex over some girl pretending that she's an operator and has everything in backwards.
So you'll take the 50 cal Barrett slow-mo butt jiggle over the small gun range?
Yeah, because they're self-aware. They're self-aware that they're being egregious or just being over the top. Anthony, you okay with, I'm saying I'd rather just be over the top and in our face and going, hey, here's a hot girl, watch her jiggle, is a lot better than someone. I saw an advertisement this morning. It was on Reddit, and it was some company that was advertising their SWAT gear, and they had this like good-looking tatted up woman on there. She had all the curves in the right place, and she was in motion behind a car with no mag in her AR. And I'm like, no, give me the butt jiggles.
Yeah, I mean, to each their own. I don't know if I have a preference either way.
What a non-answer from the lawyer.
I mean, I guess if you're going to say, would I rather just be so overt and in our face that like we know what they're doing? Sure. It's all marketing. I mean, either way, it's marketing. I think to Johnny's earlier point, just be aware of what's going on. But I mean, are the viewers really not that aware? Like we were all aware when Budweiser and Burger King and all of them were doing those very overt sexual ads on TV. We all knew what they were doing. And I think the interesting thing too is in the gun industry, I think there's just that polar, like I said, there's that spectrum. Like we have women in the industry who maybe are good looking, but really are in the industry and really know firearms and know how to shoot. And then you have all the way to this other side where this company is just adding or just hiring these women that are part of marketing firms who are on these calendars, but they're shooting an AR with no mag in it. We know women in the industry who would never let those photos be taken. Be like, what are we doing here? Like, no, I'm not doing this. This looks bad for me. It looks bad for the industry. Yeah, maybe the more overt Reddit video that you watch, Johnny, is better because it's just so in your face that there's no mistaking what's going on. That is just pure sex appeal.
Yeah, and I think it's to your point. Like, we all remember Hardee's had those women eating those giant double cheeseburgers, and
Yeah.
it was so ridiculous because that woman, that skinny woman on there, hasn't had a
Yeah.
cheeseburger since she was 7, and
Yeah.
she's like eating and licking all the stuff. And I'm like, how dumb are we? Like, how dumb? How dumb do they think I am? Oh, girl, like, how dumb do you? Oh, eat it again. It gets us, like, it does. Like, there's no way around it. We'd be liking women, even faithfully married dudes who are not on the prowl, unlike myself, that they, these guys are still, it's going to get their attention.
It's still, I mean, it's not just the gun industry, like we said earlier. Like, you just think about the news industry, like meteorologists. Who are the meteorologists that have probably the most watch time? It's going to be that smoke show versus the person with one tooth from a dairy farm who's like, it's going to rain today. Yeah.
I have never been so interested in bariatric pressure than when the smoke show comes on the weather. Yeah, I tune in. We all do it.
And some of us will know what we're talking about. Like, I'll watch the weather from Mexico because there's a certain meteorologist who turns left like nobody's business.
I know exactly who you're talking about. I don't even know her name. It's probably Maria.
Yannette Garcia.
And
Jared's got her pinned on his phone.
Yeah, it's not the worst experience. That is basic freaking biology. And there was a Christian psychologist named Dobbs. I don't even know if he's still around, in the 90s. And he talked a lot about, he did a book called Bringing Up Boys, and about the basic biology of men and the chemicals that are in our brain, and the snap, the instant bang our brain has when we see the correct hips to waist ratio. It works, it sells, it gets our attention. And I think, truth be told, you and I both have companies, and we have used the same female in advertisements for both. And she's a serious gun girl. I won't throw her under the bus, but she's serious. She knows what she's doing. She's serious. And she also she's very photogenic. And we've both used her, and I use her openly. I'm glad to use her. Used her for TriStar. And I think it's great. And she happens to be cool, and she's photogenic. And I think it's the right decision for the company. And I don't have a problem at all with that. There's too many industries and too many little incel men who are upset at women for being attractive, and they blame them for being attractive. Oh, well, she wore a tank top. And I'm like, she wore whatever freaking thing she wants to wear. It's her body. And I think the truth is both can be true at the same time. We can be in a place where biology sells, and also women can do whatever the frick they want to do. And I'm okay with that. I think our industry is, we open with you saying you think things are a little bit better now, and you're blaming the coof, but things have progressed on a little bit.
Yeah, you don't see it as much. It's still out there. It's always going to be a part of marketing in general. It's marketing 101 is to get eyeballs on your product. That by all means necessary. But there hasn't been as much that I've seen in the big shows. Maybe in the small shows, it might still be, or actually, it's like GunCon doesn't use it. It doesn't do gun buddies at all. So there are some industry events that doesn't have any part in it.
But it's also run by an elbow. I mean, and John's an elbow, but John is pretty sensitive. And when I was new in the industry, John walked me through a lot of things. And a few years ago for GunCon, he got accused of being a racist. And it's because he is, possibly. That's a joke. So don't whoever that guy that cuts these videos up, that was a joke. John's one of my best buddies, and he got accused of being a racist because the panel one year was all pasty-faced fat white guys. And somebody said, "Hey, you're a racist." And John called me and he goes, I just invited my friends. Can I just invite my friends to have a conversation? These are just the guys I happen to be friends with. And that really stuck with me. Can't I just invite my friends regardless of what they look at? I don't think John is purposefully making GunCon not about gun bunnies. I think he just invites his friends. Anthony, are you okay with that? Just invite your friends, and we don't have to go get a token Mexican just to keep the Mexican American authorities happy.
Yeah, that's so crazy. Like the online comments and all that stuff. Even during this last panel, I don't know, Jared, if you remember, one of the questioners asked about, well, why aren't there more females on this panel? And John expressly said, well, I've invited quite a few of them, and nobody responded back. So there's a lot of things that like happen behind the scenes, and everybody just wants to draw a conclusion based on what they see. And you don't really know that like John has reached out to certain people and they don't want to come out to Iowa, or they have scheduling conflict, or they just don't even respond back because they're not interested. So there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes, and the internet is the way it is, and people want to draw conclusions and they want to clip Johnny by saying certain things so they can get their clicks or whatever. It's just the way that's part of the industry too. Everybody's always got to have a comment, and it is what it is. Going back to the interesting point about like, is the whole gun bunny thing falling out in the industry? Do you guys think that's just a product of after COVID, these events are just declining in popularity, and that's why we're not seeing as much of it, because the money that these companies are spending isn't being pushed so heavily into shows like SHOT Show and all these other things? Because I in some ways I think that's probably more of what's happening. I just don't think that a lot of these companies are throwing as much money into these events that they used to after COVID, because they just saw it just isn't as profitable for them.
Yeah, that's a big part of it now, because we've been at industry trade events where all the companies are saying, you know what, the industry as a whole is down, whatever, 19% over, last year and the year before. So they have smaller budgets. So with smaller budgets, you need to make harder decisions, and the harder decisions are, booth appearances or hiring in talent or bringing in a gun bunny or something like that. Whereas before they had more, I guess, more revenue they could just play around with and utilize as they see fit. But yeah, it's the industry as a whole is feeling that across the board.
I think it's complicated. I don't think there's one answer. I do think that the age of the influencer is here. I think that more and more, way more than when I first got in the industry, companies are putting their money behind people that have the clicks. And the folks that have their clicks also tend, not always, but tend to not have their titties hanging out. And so when you go by the booths, you're seeing less titties and you're seeing more tattooed, bearded dudes who get the clicks. And I think marketing folks are better at new media. And the folks that are crushing at new media tend to be good shooters that are really, really good. Some are men, some are women, but they're not exclusively there just because of their body shape, if that makes sense. There's still women that are crushing it, but guys and gals are getting hired because of their abilities and really their clicks. So I think it's more about clicks and less about some moral push of companies saying, we're not going to do the titties anymore. I think they're smart about how to get the clicks. I think that's one answer. There's probably a lot of slices to the pie. Anthony, what do you think?
I think it was interesting something you just said, and it just popped in my head. Maybe
titties?
It's
the part about titties.
Titties, yeah, the titties. I think maybe we're in an age where we've moved away from the gun bunny, and now we're in the age of the tactical operator guy, because we have all seen the gun bro, the beard, the operator look with the tattoos. There's definitely a rise in that. There's a big rise in that on Instagram and YouTube channels and booth appearances. So maybe we've just made a shift from the gun bunny era into the tactical operator era, because I think you definitely see that at trade shows.
I was hanging out with a young man not that long ago the other day, and he said he was all tore up, and he said they had gotten a new gun. He and his friends, they're all 18, and they had just gotten their first AR, 2 or 3 of them. And of course, one had an SKS and one had an AK, but they were going to go shooting, and they were burning daylight. It was already like 4 or 5 o'clock, and one of his buddies had to have a pair of tactical gloves, because his favorite operator on YouTube had to have it. And so he said, they went on like a literal 4-hour adventure looking for this one pair of gloves. They went all over the Tri-Cities here. He said it took them 4 hours to find the right gloves because he could not shoot without that. Gets to the range and gets his gloves on, and within 10 minutes blows off one of his fingers. And I think that is unfortunate for his digit and hilarious, and I think it's telling of where we're at.
Like literally blew
his finger off with his new gloves.
Wow.
Yeah, literally. Like that was not hyperbole. He shopped for gloves for 4 hours, and then he went down to 9 fingers. And I think it's funny, but sad. Be careful out there, people. But I think that's really telling where we're at. Anthony, fantastic point. You get the golden star of the day saying, hey, I think we're still in the gun bunny age. Maybe it's not about titties hanging out, big old conservative red, white, and blue titties hanging out of tank tops. Maybe today it's more about tattooed bros and the gun vets and the vet bros. And that has become a box that companies are looking for. And if it sells, I get it. And I think it's companies, the big companies, they're hiring these guys. That is a great point, Anthony, that I think maybe that's where we're really headed, because that's what sells. Guys there's a basic phenomenon and this we're generalizing all, men and women, and this is a tendency. It's not specific, it's a tendency. There's exceptions. But if a woman generally looks at another attractive woman, may go, oh my gosh, I'm not her. Oh my gosh, I'm fat and I'm not as skinny as her. And my lips aren't as plump as her. And I need to pluck my eyebrow. And it's all of these negatives. Guys will look at a tough guy. I used the example of Macho Man earlier, but whatever tough guy. They'll look at Garand Thumb and go, heck yeah, I'm going to buy those gloves. I'm going to be that. And it's easier for men to go, I'm going to be that, than it is for women, because women tend to go, I'm not that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Yeah, totally different thought processes. And I think companies that find it very easy to market when they're just marketing dudes that make that a type of dude that little boys want to be, including this little boy. I see some of the operators, I'm like, heck yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to buy those boots.
I think that's why you've seen an interesting shift too in the industry. Like, just kind of reflecting on this, the tactical equipment, like, and I hate the word tactical, but whatever. I mean, we're talking about like the rise of people wearing range belts, with like specific, Safariland holsters, and running optics on handguns, and setting up belts a specific way, or people actually wearing body armor while they go out and train, or people getting into night vision helmets. We've seen a big rise of that in our industry. And maybe that's what that is even more so now on social media and online. And even if you just go to like print magazines like Recoil and all those, there's definitely been a rise in that marketing, catering, and putting that image out there of, the operator. And even I fall victim to, I just bought a new sub-second belt in black multicam because I like the way the black multicam looks. And I want to look sick when I go on the range. Like, yeah, I like training, but I also want to look cool, as everybody wants to look cool when they're out training. Look good, feel good, play good. I think we all kind of fall into that. And maybe that's just the weird shift we're coming into our industry. And that's why you're seeing a big, maybe move away from the gun bunny thing. And they're just hitting us with the tactical bro operator look. And maybe we're all just falling, maybe even I'm falling victim to that.
Yeah, and it may be that they're not doing that to us, is that we've done that to the industry. That's what we click on. That's what sells. I think it's interesting. For me, I want to follow and chase people that are doing good work that I can learn from, and that I also want to emulate. I tell people often, they'll ask me, hey, Johnny, I'm between this gun and this gun. And I'll say, they're both great brands. They're both going to run. Get the one that turns your knob, because if you really, really like it and you're dialed in on that gun, you're going to train more.
Or buy them both.
That's advice from Jared. I want to say this very clearly to wrap up. Women, we love you. Gun bunnies, we love you. Keep posting. We love seeing your feed. Y'all are fantastic. Keep it up. But I think overall, I think it's just healthy to stop and go. I think most women in the industry are getting it right. I think they are doing good work. There's things we can learn from. I will never, as long as I live, shoot as good as Lena Michalek. I'm saying there's more women getting it right than wrong.
100%. And I'm glad that they have the spotlight. I'm happy to pass the baton to some of them and let them run it further down the line than I could, because I think it ultimately gets us all to where we want to be as a community. On behalf of Anthony, the Arms Scholar out in California, Jared to my left of Guns and Gadgets, I'm Johnny B, and we'll see you soon.